guys are doing?
Oh, very good. I'm glad you're here. I haven't seen you in forever.
You know, I've missed seeing you in true life.
Right?
Erica,
Branding
you have a
out,
twin?
Erica.
Yes, I do. I have a twin.
I didn't know this. There's two of you?
Yeah. Hello,
Hello.
twin sister. She's still on campus. Hello, Professor Krupsaw.
Hello, Professor Krupsaw.
Hey, Joe. Hi,
Hello,
Erica. Hi, Sam.
Professor O'Neill.
I haven't seen Dr. Crupshaw in like 7 years. Hi.
Good to see you.
Some of my favorite books I read in your night class.
What did we do together, Jess?
It was like, I think 19th century literature.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Or it was like early modern. I can't remember the exact title of it, but it was like early 20th century. It might have been called early 20th century or something like
Novels
that.
of the 20th century.
Yeah,
That's probably what it was,
and
yeah.
English 435 that John and I did together, too.
Yeah.
At Madame Bovary, Sorrows of Young Werther, Crime and Punishment.
Yeah, we made our way through Crime and Punishment. We did it.
Slowly,
Just-
because it's...
Like all of the character torture in one class.
Well, you know, in 499, we just finished Toni Morrison's Paradise, another fat one.
Ooh.
But that was good, I thought.
Just the sight of that book scares me a little.
The print is very manageable.
Okay.
Not really tiny, so it was good.
Now, was Dostoevsky paid by the word when he first printed? Did he publish it serially in like in literary magazines?
I think so.
Yeah, explains a lot.
Yeah,
I remember correctly.
and he was
Hey,
dictating
John.
to his wife.
What's that
Oh,
again?
really?
He was dictating to his wife.
Bless her soul.
That would explain the sometimes rambling nature of the novel.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh no, that was him totally. Oh, glad to see some faces I haven't seen in a really long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Hey, Sam, how's it going, everybody?
Oh.
Subbing?
Subbing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, are you all subbing right now?
Mm-hmm.
I
I
sub
know.
again on Monday and Tuesday.
Picking up that
Wednesday.
money that I was missing out on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. To do the same work and get paid for it now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, not even that much work compared to what we were
Oh,
doing.
less work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi,
Is there a
Hannah.
little pay bump now that you finished student teaching on the substitute teaching?
Mhm.
No.
EVSC pays the same whether you have a license or a bachelor's, I think.
Oh, really?
You get $5 more if you have a teaching license
Oh, okay.
per day. That is, not per hour.
Wow. So if you do it for a whole year, you might pay for the cost of the license.
Yep.
Mhm.
Barely.
Warwick County gives you more, like it's like a $20 difference in Warwick County.
I need
Yeah,
to start
and then if
doing that.
you're a licensed teacher and they hire you for a long-term sub position, like it's more than a month, then you
Mhm.
get paid like crazy amount. They were telling me it was like $200 a day or something like that. And I was like,
That's
whoa.
what mine is, Jeff.
Wow.
Same for
So-
EVSC.
I was like, get my
$200 a day.
license.
You're
not bad.
raking in the bucks.
Yeah.
Sounds very
Woo.
promising.
EVSC cheaping out? I wouldn't imagine that.
No, what are you talking about, John?
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So I think some of us have to leave around 5, a little after 5, so we'll try to keep this to about 30, 40 minutes. So I thought we'd start just by going around and having all of our student teachers introduce themselves for those who don't know them and just talk about their assignments. So what grade level you had, what kind of classes you taught, just the details so we get a picture of what your semester was. So I don't know, John, you want to get us started?
Oh, sure. My name is John Martin. I'm the eternal senior of the student teachers. This is my second degree, and I actually can defer some of that, I think, to Jess, because she has more degrees than I do currently. But I taught at Harrison under Mrs. Kaiser. I taught junior English and advanced junior English and etymology. Jess.
Oh, are we bumping?
Oh, that's
Sure.
great. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I'm Jess, Jessica Gibbs, Jess, and I'm a post-bac student. I got a bachelor's of English literature from USI. Hello, former professors. I also got a bachelor's of history from USI, and then I moved to England for 3 years, and I got a master's of film literature and a master's of book publishing, which was a total waste of money. Don't do it.
Oh.
But it was fun. It was
Oh,
amazing. But it was a waste of money. And then I came home and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I was like, I always wanted to be a teacher and I might do a PhD one day, and decided to come back. But anyway, I was at a castle in Warwick County, which was amazing. And I was with Mr. Gibson, who teaches seniors advanced composition and expository writing. Bump going down the line. I guess I'll go to Erica because you're in my line.
Perfect. I'm Erica Denison. I am getting my English teaching degree, of course, but I'm also right now in a course for getting my teaching English as a foreign language through a different university of sorts closer to home. So I will be substitute teaching / student teaching again over at the International School in Louisville. I'll be doing that for 11 weeks, and then I'll get that licensure, and hopefully I'll be abroad here in February or April teaching English. I was at Tompkins Middle School with Mr. Payne. I taught an inclusion class for English, and also it was 8th grade incorporation of inclusions, and I had 2 regular English classrooms for 8th grade. Bump on down. I believe I have Sam Barsan as my next person.
Hi all, I'm Sam. For those who don't know me, I've had a few of you guys in class, and both as teachers and classmates. But I was at Harrison with Mrs. Coy, who's part of the Shepherd Academy. So she teaches sophomores to seniors, a range of a lot of them CAP classes. So you have your public speaking and your advanced composition that are also dual credit. So, but I personally taught mostly sophomores, advanced and Shepherd sophomores. So I really like the Shepherd Academy for the humanities. It's a really good marriage of social studies and English. And I honestly want to, found something like that at whatever school I end up at. I'm from Cincinnati. I'm actually in the process of moving right now, so I can't sit anywhere inside. And I'm going to probably be a part of the CPS here soon. Hopefully I'll be licensed to teach out of New Harmony, and then, it's in the satellite, but not the Child Protective Services, but the Cincinnati public school system. But yeah, I that's about it.
I got to butt in for a second, Sam. I really dig the look. That hair,
oh, thank you
hair
so
is awesome.
much.
Yeah.
Quarantine
Is that a
hair,
COVID
right?
thing, or is it?
It started, yeah. It started as a buzz cut last summer, just never got touched during all of COVID, and it just gotten so far I couldn't stop here,
Yeah. Yeah.
Use it before you lose it, right?
Right.
But yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, sure. I think Sam.
I call him Sam Herdegen, yeah.
All right, the second Sam. All right. I'm Sam Herdegen. I was at Lodge Community School in Evansville, and I taught 7-8 ELA, and we did a little bit of AIM here and there, but mostly it was just ELA, and we actually went through the process of helping institute a new curriculum in our school halfway through student teaching, which was interesting. But my CT is actually giving me a dirty look right now. So, yeah, I mean, I'll probably be around subbing for the next few weeks at Lodge. And then after that, I'm looking for a long-term sub job. And I've gotten one kind of halfway offer from Plaza. So that's interesting. And well, yeah, that's me.
All right. So I have a list of questions, but this is a small group. So if anybody wants to jump in at any time and add something or ask another question, you should feel free. So the first question I had is to benefit the students we have in the audience who are, approaching student teaching. So were there any surprises or anything that you would have liked to have known before you started your semester of student teaching? Something that you didn't know about the experience that you wish you had before you started? And you can kind of just jump in if you have a response. And of course, not everybody has to respond to every question. Go ahead, Sam.
Big for me was that we used the TCPP model. I believe we're the last students to use that. It is state accredited, but it's not quite the what is it? The ed or the ed TPA, I believe is what it is. Yeah. So I don't know what that's if that affects us at all in the job market, but at least know going in that we didn't know that this was the TCPP was kind of our equivalent, but know going in that you guys are going to have like an officially state credited portfolio at the end to bring to interviews and stuff like that. So that was just it kind of got dropped on us about halfway through the semester that, oh yeah, this isn't really the perfect portfolio, but I think you guys will be the first guinea pigs breaking in the Ed TPA hopefully here. Yeah,
it's been kind of a slow process rolling some of that out. A downside is that it will cost a bit of money to do the Ed TPA, so you dodged a bullet at least there. It's a few $100, but yeah, it is a little more I think nationally recognized.
That's it on that one.
I wish I would have known a little bit more on how to work a little more the Promethean style. I got to learn more while I was in the classroom, how to use one. I was the smartboard generation, the very first smartboard generation. So the 4 little colored markers that never really actually followed your writing style. That's what I had. So being able to see these Promethean boards, and I've never used one before. So it was kind of nice to understand it through my CT's perspective on how he used it, but probably I kind of was searching things on my own of other little mechanics it used, and I was kind of messing with it as I was teaching. So if I had other skill sets of how to use it beforehand, that would have been nice to potentially incorporate into my CT, because as I was putting him in the classroom, he was like, I had never known that was a function of it, and I wish I would have searched it too or something. So
say take advantage of the tech courses that are in the ed department. I did take it on a whim because I had an open spot, and I was like, oh, what else can I take that's related to the degree? And I was like, oh, tech, that might teach me something. There is some stuff that secondary might not use, but there's a lot of stuff in there. GimKit, Paradeck, Nearpod, all of these programs that are very useful in the classroom. And I actually kicked off my cooperating teacher using Paradeck. She was like, oh God, I can do this like remotely if we need to. That's great. And I don't know that you guys will have to experience all of the COVID stuff you may for the very beginning of the semester, but it's going to be interesting.
Do you remember oh, sorry. Yeah. Do you remember the course number for the tech class that you took?
I can look it up. I can look it up. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah. If you could just put that in the chat so I can jot that down.
Yeah, because you get a lot of time on Google Classroom with Dr. Sparks, but and that is helpful because all of EVSC uses it, but those other things John mentioned, those are all good things that you should familiarize yourself with, so you have a repertoire walking in.
I guess it was another thing. I had 3 students within the school who were blind. So, and I also had a couple students who were deaf. So it was already nice that I already known some sign language so I could communicate to them. And they had their interpreters with them as well, but kind of never having actually a student present within the classroom before that, never kind of having to deal with making lesson plans to accommodate. I know we always talked about having such things within the lesson plans of accommodations, but I don't think I actually had to really figure that out until I actually had such students within the classroom. And having my ability to at least speak some sign language was a little bit more helpful too. And there's a sign language course at USI that, and even going to the sign language club, if you don't want to take the course, they teach you a couple of tricks on how to communicate with such students that you might want to invest in, because there is a increase I've seen of such children being included into the general education classroom. So it'd be nice for you all to have that skill. I was really pushed into other classrooms at points at that time when they were like, so and so's in my class, will you just come over and talk to them? So might be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, go ahead, John.
Somebody messaged me, and I'm very much in favor of this. Know your standards before you go in. A lot of what the districts want are based on standards. Your Indiana standards that you go over in writing and I believe it's writing and lit in secondary schools. You can't gloss over those. You will not escape them. On my class, at the very least, we had to follow the curriculum map, and everything that we did had to touch at least one of the required standards. So keep that in mind.
I think I'm going to quote you at the beginning of 310 next semester when I introduce the standards. I wrote, John Martin, know your standards. So very useful, good information from everybody. So the next question I had is whether you have just any really memorable experiences or challenges, something that illustrates what your experience was like as a student teacher, maybe something that you had to overcome or like a success that you had that you'd like to share with us.
I can share one. So there was a kid in my 7th period class, and the very first day he came up to me and he was like, I'm dyslexic, so don't expect much from me. And I was like, okay, you're not excused because you're dyslexic. And then I read his first paper and I was like, whoa, this is bad. Bad because he just didn't know what he was doing. And so he got like I think a 50 out of 100 or something. It was pretty low. By the end of the semester, when I graded his last paper, he got a 96, and he was like crying, like his grown kid was like, I can't believe it, my mom's gonna frame this. And he was like, thank you for giving it to me. And I was like, no, you earned that because you've been paying attention and following along. And he just looked at me like, I did earn it. And I was like, yeah. And it just kind of like really touched me that like, I guess none of his other teachers, they were like, oh, he's dyslexic, he can do the best he can. But like, I babied him the whole class, and by the end, like, it was worth it. So, a lot of the students, like when I left, they bought me gifts. I was like, don't spend your money on me. And they were like bringing me cupcakes and like all this stuff. And they were like, no, like, we're really sad. And I shouldn't say this because I actually like Mr. Gibson, but some of them were like, can you stay and Mr. Gibson go? And I was like, it doesn't work that way. So it was definitely very memorable, and Castle offered me a long-term sub position across the hall from Mr. Gibson, and all the kids were like, yay, we're still going to get to see you. And then we went virtual, so now I got to see him anyway. So definitely, if you can, I mean, everybody's personalities are different. I'm very bubbly and talk a lot, but if you can make those connections with the kids, not to keep talking, but like one of the virtual kids, very first week she was virtual and she came back, like she was quarantined, and she ran and was like, do you know who I am? Were you virtual? She's like, yeah. What was your icon? She was a girl playing soccer, and I was like, oh, you're Eliza. And then that moment on, she was like, I love you, you're so nice, you always remember me. I was like, woo. So just make connections with the kids, I guess, in an appropriate way.
I gotta tag into Jess's thing saying to make sure you know the kids' names. They really do respond to that very well, especially if you get them down really quick. I got a couple of my own, and it wasn't because it was bad, it's just that their names were really interesting and they kind of just stuck with me. I had a child named Nehemiah, and even though he was one of more of my troubling students, every time I was like, oh, good morning, Nehemiah, he's like, wait, you remembered my name? Like the first day I'd met him, I was like, yes, sir. Remember your name. I would go out to the hall, and every day they would come in. I'd say each of their names just to say hi to them. And at first they were like, wait, she knows my name already? Like, that's kind of interesting, weird. And I was like, sorry, I'm just doing it so I remember your name when I actually have to start teaching. I have to call you by name, because if you start referring to them by like, hey, you over there, they're not going to like you as much. I had one kid tell me that because I had another student teacher from Yui in the building, and he had came running to me saying how mad he was, like she didn't know his name yet. But there was that part, and then you're also going to have to deal with potentially students. I don't know how much more you'll have to deal with it with COVID, but students not turning in a lot of work, or you're not going to get a lot of participation because of such students not caring as much. The only way you can do that is trying to make your lessons just a little bit more interesting. You have to go out of your way to kind of make more of those connections, as Jessica said, because they're having a tough time already staying focused of sitting in their bedroom, and then having to sit there and you forget about them a little bit when they're on the screen behind you as you're talking. So kind of incorporating them, especially with games. I had a lot of kids who we kind of made the virtual kids their own team, and they were using the chat messaging as a way of discussing how they were going to do their presentation of sorts. And that was probably the best part, because they at least felt like they were still included. So that's something you got to keep thinking about, that you're going to have virtual kids that feel as if they're already locked in. I had to go through quarantine too, so having to stay inside your house all day and do nothing but be able to go on a screen time for an hour of sorts, it really does like make your mental environment not so happy, because you're stuck somewhere and you can't talk to people as much. So including them is only just a little bit better.
To build off what Jess and Erica said, it's about building connections and making your lessons interesting. And one thing we did was we were reading Percy Jackson for our 7th graders. And, I tried to think of a fun way, I could make a bell ringer. Because in my school, instead of having teachers stay in their classrooms, teachers actually move to the new students, whereas students stay in their seats. So you kind of keep a little bit of that social distancing going on. So, your traditional bell ringers of putting up like a little, free write prompt on the PowerPoint don't really work as students are entering. So instead, I kind of took a page from Dr. O'Neill's book and started having my kids translate ancient Greek, like book quotes. Like I'd take a book quote, translate it into ancient Greek, and have them try to translate it back into English. And I had all my kids separated into different cabins. Like, so, like in Percy Jackson, depending on who your Greek parent is, you're sorted into a cabin. So I did the same thing with my kids, and whoever had the most points got like a couple extra credit points in their next summative assessment. They all really get into it, except for, those that were just really super out of it by that time in the day, because it was my last period. But just, finding those small things that you can get kids interested in, they really appreciate.
I actually have one more. So another thing I'd recommend is treat every day, like in terms of classroom management, like it's a new day, which seems obvious, but like I had one kid lie to me about something, and the next day, he was like acting like nothing happened. Like he had already told me he was sorry, but I was still kind of ticked about it. Like, and my mentor teacher was like, you got to just treat it every day, like clean slate, hit restart on the computer, go. So that's another thing I would recommend is like, if you got to go home and cry, or if you got to go home and just use your punching bag or whatever, but then new day, don't hold any grudges, because they've already forgotten about it, so.
All right, so I do have some other questions, but I thought I could see if there are any questions from the audience, whether from students or faculty, things they'd like to hear from our student teachers.
May I ask a question? Content-wise, is there something that you were missing when they sent you into the classroom? Other than the technology or, knowing all the standards. Did you have all the tools that you needed to teach composition and literature?
I felt pretty strong in the composition aspect, especially short stories and such. That's what I went into, and that was automatically the unit they were already in. I think the comprehension was, I think the only thing that I was having trouble with was when we were reading the story, because we couldn't, because they were on their computers reading it, but it was more of getting them to, you only have so much period because our periods are actually shorter in the classrooms now than they were before. So having to read stories in a timely manner while also making sure you're getting all of the little lessons on top of it, on top of the reading, and making sure they're comprehending the reading was a little bit of a struggle. I had kids near the end, they were having to rewrite the ending of rewrite an ending for the Most Dangerous Game. And I had a couple students who weren't even having the right ending to begin with. They were like, yeah, so-and-so came, like he wasn't dead, like so-and-so was this character. I'm like, that Whitney's on a boat. Where was Whitney in this part? And they were like, oh, I thought he was still in the story, and kind of showing that they weren't really paying attention, but kind of getting that aspect of how we're supposed to keep their attention as we're reading such longer material a little bit. That's the only problem that I had.
I feel like more on the content delivery side, like we were prepared well with the content itself, but more on the delivery of some of the works. Now I was really lucky with the CAP classes that like I was able to like really transfer kind of how I was delivered, you know, these classes really recently with both composition and with public speaking. I think we even used the same textbook for public speaking as like inspiration, but it was just kind of like I taught the Odyssey and trying to figure out how to like teach kind of a, you know, a difficult older text. It's not, I mean, not difficult for me, but you know, with a lot of names and complex, you know, just a lot going on, 26 books of Odyssey. So I just didn't really know how to break that down into like the most important aspects and teach that way. But we ended up having a small success with essentially having the Shepherd students teach it to themselves by assigning individual books, but without much context for the other books. Like we were trying to get them to get into jigsaw groups, expert groups, to build context together and start to make connections between each book. But on its own, like the first time we did it twice. People didn't really understand how their book fit into the larger narrative. So you just get so little time to read, and the kids, I'm gonna say it really, it's like, even if it's a short book, we were at Lord of the Flies, they do not want to read. And like no one in this generation wants to read. I mean, we felt that even a little bit being children of the internet, but like, I'm not kidding. Like these kids write like they are texting. So if you can just get them interested enough in the premise of a book and, you know, find the important stuff, but it's just sometimes it's hard to figure out what's the most important or what's going to get their attention most easily. So at least when it comes to just basic, you know, like recall of, you know, terminology and what happened in the plot and stuff like that. So just, you know, just hard to get kids to read, but what's new, right?
Say possibly. Oh,
Can I ask?
sorry. Oh,
You can go ahead.
sorry. I would say my weak point was definitely trying to come up with some of my assessments. Just for me, it's like creating a summative assessment to cover everything that we just did, asking the right questions so I can get the right data for not only me as I'm teaching, but also to leave behind for my cooperating teachers so that they know what's going on, like as I'm handing it off to them at the end of the teaching semester. Like, this is what I found out, this is what they can do, this is what they can't do.
I think we had a couple of questions.
Hannah, did you have a question?
Yes. So could you talk about sort of any struggles that you've had with like discipline or respect? Because I know that's one like concern that I have. And then I do a little bit of tutoring with 4th grade students, and like there's one particular student that I work with a lot, and I just have a lot of trouble like helping him sort of stay on task. And I was just wondering if you had any advice about that. Which of course it's different, well, you know, with like 4th graders, but still.
Like for me, like I have like again, a very talkative personality, and I try to use kind of like humor if it's a minor thing. So especially since they're all so young and have like a different dialogue than like something I would have. So I'd be like, bro, chill. And and then he would look at me and he'd be like, I'm not doing nothing. I'm like, you're bothering me, sit. And then he'd be like, fine. And he'd sit down. But then if it was something big, like really going with the language or something, then I would get more stern and be like, let's talk outside. Do you need to go down to the principal's office because this is not happening right now? And it was like almost because I'm using the humor to show like it's not that serious, that when you switch over and you're like, stop, they're like, whoa, she's serious. So that's kind of like how I've tried to do it, but humor doesn't always work with all the students. So some of my students, I'll have to like really give them the evil eye. But it was very few because Castle, and I had seniors, so they were pretty good at Castle. But that's what I try to do personally, and I know that's not everybody's style. But
now sometimes like sarcasm or like I'll give a real sarcastic answer that I think is very clear that it was sarcasm and that I was just like playing around, and they don't always necessarily see that, especially with the mask kind of cutting off a little bit of social contact. I just feel like not only do you really not know what your students feel like just by looking at their faces easily, but they can't tell kind of how you mean what you say. And, you know, they are younger and they look at you, probably take most of what you say at face value. So because I try the same thing, and sometimes it really does work and everybody's laughing, and, you know, it does kind of make the student feel dumb, which I don't really like. But then other times it really can rub them the wrong way if they're already kind of mad at me. So just tread the line.
You will find one thing that I didn't know about heading into EVSC is the system of low-level referrals. It is something that is ingrained into everybody, and I ran into it. I was like, no, you can't just like ask somebody to be like, go down to the office immediately. You have to first talk to them at their desk, give them a verbal warning. You have to take them out the hallway to kind of talk them down, ask them what's going on. And you'll also run into another term called SEL, social emotional learning, where, again, you can take them out to the hall. I think that's about the second step. Third step is probably a call home to a parent to try to get things evaluated. And if it just keeps going from there, then you can take them down to the assistant principal, dean, I think is the official term at most schools. And then it starts to elevate from there. But you have to really take it slowly at first and do these low-level referrals in the computer system, which is RDS. Another term you will learn very fast.
To kind of touch on what John said about the social emotional learning, you know, one thing we need to consider is not exactly what the student is doing, although we need to keep that in mind, but more about the reasoning about why they're doing the behavior. You know, if they're not getting enough food or enough sleep at home, you know, then you're not really going to be able to reach their higher level, you know, learning than if, you know, they're well rested and well fed. And that's kind of something we're doing a lot at my school is, you know, we're providing, you know, every meal for every student is free at our school. And we do laundry services, we provide showers. So, you know, we really need to provide for the whole student rather than just focusing on what they're doing. And if, you know, you control, like if you make sure that everything is okay on the lower level tiers, and you'll talk about a little bit more about that when you get to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then you can really start getting them engaged in class.
To go off of what Sam said, to go off of what Sam said, this is slightly off topic, but like, don't be afraid also to like, if a student needs help, like help them, like whether it's academically or not. Like one of my students, she confided, and this is for my long-term subbing, I'd only been there 2 days, and she confided in me that she thinks she has dyslexia, but she's never been tested for it. And she was like, I am trying so hard, but when I read these books, like they look jumbled up. But I'm really good with audiobooks. That's how I read at home, is like I listen on audiobooks. Can you find me an audiobook for 12 Angry Men, like so I can follow along? And I got her one, and she's been doing great. But then she told me the previous teacher, the one that I took over for, that she had asked her like 5 times and she never got her any audiobooks. So it just breaks my heart, you know, but that's besides the point. But so if a kid asks you for something, you know, if within reason, you know, you try to get it yourself or find the people that can get it for you. Really try to help them out, because some people want to learn, they just don't have the same opportunities or the same capabilities. And
I've heard dyslexia twice, and I just found this out on Facebook, actually. There's apparently a font that's specifically designed for dyslexia that is like it has all of the distinguishing marks of certain letters, as well as the first letter of each sentence is slightly bolded, so they can kind of use that as a marker. So I might pass that along to some of you to kind of look at, because it's a nice tool.
Yeah, if you get the name of the font, email it to me. All right, so we're just about out of time, but I thought I'd ask if there's anything that didn't come up that you'd like to share about your experience, just something that's worth saying before we close for the day.
I'd like to start, and I'd like to recommend to any student teacher out there that you start off. I recommend that you try and take your test before you start your student teaching semester, because you have to wait a month in between taking tests. And honestly, get the practice test. They cost $30 for each content area, so the pedagogy test and your content test, but they are so worth it, and they help me get a handle on the test, because there's some really bizarre questions out there.
Yeah, luckily the test is going to change. It's going to switch from Pearson to ETS, so they should be better, and they'll provide a practice test. But I think that is good advice to get it taken care of before you have to worry about student teaching.
And the other thing,
go ahead. I was just going to touch on that. I took the English test about halfway through my student teaching, when I was getting like fully used to explaining things in a high school type way. And going into that test, it was like, okay, suddenly back to collegiate thinking and all of these things. Like, oh my God, am I going to pass this or not? And definitely get the practice test. Okay, I'm done.
The other thing I wanted to say was get your sub license, because with the current USI policies, you can sub for 8 days, which means you're making $70 each day you sub, before taxes, of course. And it gives you a lot of experience alone in a classroom without your CT to back you up, which I think is something that really helped me figure out what type of teacher I'm going to be. And it's just really valuable experience. Plus you're making money and you can put it on your resume.
We were taught at Harrison, 2 tenets we were really striving. You guys probably, my students or my classmates have heard this enough, but grace, forgiveness, patience, just all these virtues are very important this semester in a lot of ways, with yourself, with your CT, with your students, with just about anything. There are going to be a number of things that you're expected to do that might seem like they're outside of something that, you know, is your responsibility, but you just got to put up with it. All means all is a good one. That's Harrison's motto. But then they picked up especially with grace, and you know, because there'll be students that'll be gone for 2 weeks, and then they'll be gone. They'll get quarantined right after, and it's like they get so far behind. You gotta, you know, give them an incomplete and then help them catch up. But when they get back, that's what every single teacher is doing with them. So it's just like, really just stress the most important stuff. Be nothing but nice. Don't be, you know, a jerk over absence this semester, because there's going to be plenty of it on all fronts. Teachers, students, student teachers. Just don't make a bad thing worse on yourself, because it was hard. I will say it was very hard. Just life in general right now, pandemic is hard, but they you know, a little bit's different to help you, and a little bit's different that will inconvenience you, and you just have to take the good and the bad. Take the good with the bad.
Kind of expect the unexpected. We had, I don't know if you heard about the accident that happened on 41 over this past semester, but it was, I think, a mother and 2 kids that were involved in it. And it just so happened at Harrison that one of the kids that essentially survived in the family went to our school. And one of the kids that did end up passing away in that accident was also a Harrison student. I think she was a freshman, and he was a junior, and he's been out the entire semester. Grace is like just the very beginning of it, because we can't possibly expect him to focus at any given time, given the dramatic change in his life. Finding ways to still get him involved and make him feel like he belongs, like he's a part of the family at Harrison, was extremely important for not just the school in general, but our etymology class that he was in was highly supportive of him. So again, anything can happen when you least expect it.
I'm going to say here that we're so proud of you, all of you. I mean, it's doing student teaching, doing it in the conditions that you did it. I was thinking about you every week, kind of wondering what you're doing, how you're doing it, asking Dr. O'Neill if he knows anything. So we are really proud of you and what you've achieved.
And incredibly grateful
Thank
that you
you.
took,
I was just saying thank you.
grateful that you took the time just to do this tonight. I know that you have a really busy schedule with your substitute teaching now after just finishing a very busy semester, but I think we all benefited from hearing about your experiences and the wisdom really that seems like you gained over the last few months.
It was really wonderful. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Oh, bye.